I didn't know what my workplace rights were. I thought I might get sacked. But by the time we'd finished that campaign, the huge NHS trust that was going to implement those cuts backed down, and they didn't downband any of us. Through our activity, we'd succeeded in protecting not only our own pay and conditions, but also the services for patients in those 4 boroughs as well. I'm sad to say I wasn't welcomed into the trade union movement initially. My branch was dominated by men who were far older than I was, and they resented me, not just for being a woman in a male-dominated world. They also didn't like my politics, which are socialist, and they were fiercely opposed to anybody rocking the boat with the employer. I defied those men because what they were doing, they were colluding with the employer to implement cutbacks that was wreaking havoc on our lives and on the lives of patients. And in the NHS, 77% of all staff are women, and very little gets said about the injustice faced by nurses and care workers, even though we've dire shortages of these workers in this country, because the simple fact of the matter is that the work that is done by women is of less value, or is seen to be of less value than the work done by men. And women are also suffering from the cuts and privatisation of our public services. They're being cut by the bone, and we have developed this disgraceful situation in this country where domestic abuse refuges are being privatised and deregulated, which is leading to vulnerable women being opened up to further predatory exploitation by men. And it's now seen as socially acceptable to deny women our services and our fundamental right to safety. Many important victories have been won by women in the NHS, however. They're organising themselves into the trade unions. We've seen successful insourcing campaigns, and the NHS Pay 15 campaign, which is led by women, led by nurses, inspired this entire country. But as women, it is harder for us to be involved in the battles in the political and the industrial spheres. We're pinned down by our reproductive role. And when it comes to childcare, even in 2021, the buck will always stop with the woman. Make no mistake about that. And women are now struggling. They're juggling the lion's share of domestic labour in the home. And we're also even finding ourselves as the maid breadwinners as well when it comes to work. And if this Tory government get away with slashing our public services, it will be women who will be expected to pick up all of the caring responsibilities that flow from this. The only reason we've public services is because people fought for them, and that includes women. And if we're to keep our services, women will have to fight again to do so. So as women, it's important that we stick together, we show solidarity with each other, and women cannot allow anyone to intimidate us or anyone to silence us. And women will not be silenced doesn't mean that some women will not be silenced. It means that all women will not be silenced. So sisters, let's move forward in unity, in solidarity. Let's fight hard to create a better world, not just for women, but for everyone in society and for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Helen. Thank you, thank you. And I'm just so delighted to be sitting on this table with all of these brilliant, wonderful women that I consider my friends. Next up, I'm going to hand you over to Chantal Lunt from Black Lives Matter Merseyside.
Mic check. Hi, yeah, I'm Chantal Lunt from Merseyside BLM Alliance, and it's probably quite well known now, but my journey to activism was a little bit different. So historically, I grew up in quite female-centred environments. I grew up in a house full of women. I went to an all-girls school with nuns. I then went to work in children's services surrounded by women. And then I joined the police. So I don't know if anyone can guess what happened there. And I went from this kind of experience of my voice always being quite valid and always being respected as a person to being in a male kind of dominated environment, and I experienced a lot of sexism, a lot of racism as well, but it was really clear that, you know, there was a long way to go before women would be equal. And, you know, we see a lot of this in the press at the moment. Everyone's talking about, you know, oh, there's one bad apple in the police. We need to root out all of these bad apples. And I'll quite openly say it's not the apples, it's the orchid. There's a culture in policing which is a very toxic, masculine culture. It's a culture where officers will know that there are officers within the ranks who should not be working there, dangerous officers, officers who, given the chance, will abuse women and who will abuse their role. Senior officers know this, and they will just move them around the force. So I was quite adamant when I discovered that, because it was all new to me. I was like, oh my God, I'm working with these officers who they're calling the pervert, who they're calling the rapist. I don't want to be working with these officers, so let's tell someone about it. And the force does what it did best, is just ignore the problem and kind of move the problem around. But now the conversation's being dragged to the forefront. We can only hope that massive reform is going to come. And reform isn't just getting rid of a few officers. Reform is actually getting rid of that culture within policing where it's okay to work with officers who you know should be going nowhere near women and nowhere near the uniform. That's not okay. It's not okay for senior officers to overlook the misdeeds of male officers and to just look the other way when female officers are coming to them and telling them there's an issue within the force. In terms of statistics like domestic abuse, women who are partnered with officers who are abusing them are twice less likely to receive justice. They're reporting domestic abuse from partners who are police officers, and the colleagues are losing the reports, turning up and saying, oh, it's just a domestic, and leaving them alone. Women who are in relationships with police officers are some of the most vulnerable women out there, because when those reports go in, they get lost, the paperwork goes missing, and they're so vulnerable, as well as a lot of female officers who work with these officers. I was reading a statistic the other day, I think it said about 14 out of about 200 complaints that have gone in against officers within the force for sexual harassment from other officers. Only 14 were actions, so most of the reports that go in aren't actions. And to get to the point of actually making a report against an officer, as a female officer, you know that those male officers are no longer going to protect you when you're out on the street. So in my opinion, every female officer who steps forward and makes a complaint against a male colleague, you take that complaint seriously, because it takes a lot to go to an officer and say, this is happening, this is what my colleague is doing to me. So the fact that so few are actions is absolutely horrendous. So yeah, I'd say people ask me, like, you know, when did you become an activist? And I used to think it was when I started standing on the street with a megaphone and shouting. But I actually think when I became an activist was when I stood in the police force and said, you've got an issue and this needs to change, and would not back down. Didn't win, but I didn't back down, and I think that is activism. That's activism as a woman. And that's what we all need to be. We all need to be, as women, as sisters, as people, we all need to be activists in our everyday environment. So take these conversations from events like this, take these conversations from protests and the places you go, and take them into your life, into your family, into your community, into your workplace, and action them. And we're not saying you're going to win them all, but if each of us keeps on fighting, if each of us keeps on pushing, if each of us keeps on resisting, then they've got to do something. Like, my resistance means that the next little sister who comes into the force after me, when she says something, maybe because I said something, they might actually do something this time. So it's so important. And in terms of just being a BLM activist, Black women have been at the forefront. I've got some fabulous Black women either side of me. Black women have been at the forefront of the civil rights movement for time. You know, we have been there. We have been there refusing to move on buses. We have been there on the Underground Railroad. Marsha P. Johnson got so many people within the LGBT community the rights that they have today. You know, the BLM movement that we've got at the moment was founded by 3 Black women. Black women have been at the forefront, yet we're also at the forefront of some of the worst abuse you will ever see in your life. Like, I don't know if you guys have spoken, but I've spoken to Black male activists, and I'm like, oh, this person said they were going to shoot me today. This person, like, sent me a picture of a gun. This person said this. And they do not get the same level of abuse. So in terms of vulnerabilities, Black female activists are some of the most vulnerable people you will see out there, because we are at the receiving end of some vile, vile characters. You'd only have to look at Diane Abbott, who gets, I think, about 80% of all the abuse that goes into Parliament aimed at women is aimed at Diane Abbott, and it's not an accident, and it's not an oversight that she's a woman of colour. So in terms of activism, the sisterhood, I listened to Priti Patel's speech, and I will finish now, earlier. And I noticed how many nuggets she was saying, you know, oh, women, we're going to look after women. And she mentioned women a hell of a lot more than she's mentioned women previously. And she knows why. Because women are joining forces, because we don't want the policing tactics that we're seeing. And we don't want this unequal world that we're living in. And what Priti's going to do is she's going to try and divide us as women and kind of aim to be serving women in one way whilst completely having other women, for example, women of colour, who are going to be stop and searched at a disproportionate rate off. And now's the time to not fall for it. Don't fall for those Tory policies. Now's the time to join together, every single one of us, every single member of the sisterhood, to fight the Tories and to fight for our rights. Thank you kindly.
Thanks very much, Chantal. And speaking about Priti Patel, we do have another event this evening called Priti Patel versus the People, and we'll be seeing you back there again. Okay, our next sister is Marina Marvinas from United for Black Lives from Leeds. Marvina, over to you.
I'm going to say some names and I want you to kind of make a mental note. Alex Roderick, BLM Portsmouth. Adria, BLM London. Elder, French Pratt. Mel, RMT. Ramona, People Assembly. Chantel, oh my gosh. BLM Merseyside. Delia Mattis, Black Lives Matter. Lavender, XR, Anya, Kill the Bill. I could keep going on. From Karen, from the back, I could see you there. I could tell you about names of so many phenomenal women. So many of us, like we are the air you breathe. We give you rights that you don't even know you need. We fight when no one is celebrating our voice. We nurture this toxic system and we birth great projects, great campaigns. We work on days that no one pays us even when we're sick. We do so much on a regular basis and we know you will never say thank you. We do this even when you objectify us, vilify us, create us into the best horror story you need. But guess what? We keep just giving. We keep fighting. We don't fight because we want to fight, you know. We're tired. Today, I actually was in the car. I was about to put my makeup on, put my face on, you know, like so we can put the mask. We, all as women, we do. We are the best actresses in the whole freaking world. Because even when we do not want to be in a space, we will muster the courage because if we do not do it, it won't be done. Facts. If these women are mentioning don't do what we're doing, it would not be done. And while we're doing it, we don't do it for ourselves. We don't do it for no ego. We don't do it for no praise. We don't do it to just walk up the stage to just use our voice. We do it because we see that there is an option of changing this freaking world. And we don't want the younger us to have to do this shit. Honestly, we don't. So when we say women won't be silenced, it's a big freaking statement because if it doesn't change, if our men don't stand up, we're tired of begging you guys to actually fix up. This not all men bullshit that you guys keep trying to create a freaking campaign when we come up with our campaign. Let's be honest, we are proud to be fucking women. And that's another thing. I want people to be proud to be women. Be proud of your feminine energy. This one that we're trying to be, we want an equal world, but at the same time, we can celebrate the fact that we are who we are. We are not there to actually try, and I'm going to say this, please, the Twitter people, the Instagram people, I'm already your villain, don't worry. Pick your best character. I live up to be the bad guy. I want to be the baddest bad guy I can be because you have to be a villain in someone else's story. So I'm going to say this. If you're a woman, if you're born a woman, big up to you. Big up to you. The reason being is that we can't even say that no more. And this is something that we should be able to celebrate. Big up to you. Big up to the fact that you take in spaces of who you are in a system that will always tell you that you're not good enough. Big up to you that you turn up every day not expecting anyone to celebrate you and still use your voice in places that they are not even recording what you're saying. Big up to the fact that you choose to still stand in who you are, knowing that your beauty, your standards are told on a regular basis that you're meant to fit and tick the box for someone else. We keep breaking ceilings and breaking all these stars, but yet they are not allowing us through the doors. Activists. We are born activated human beings. So when we use this word activist, women, you are the original activists. Because every day you choose to live, every day you choose to strive, every day you choose to use your voice as a mother, as a friend, as who you are blessed. That being said, to our LGBT plus communities, we support you, we celebrate you. We need as much allies as we can get in this movement. Women will not be silenced. It's the best place for you to use your voice and influence. Find a way to contribute something to the campaign. Find a way to use your voice to make a difference. Go to the Instagram, go to the Facebook, and go to the content and see how can I include this in what I do next. Marvina here, thank you.
Thanks very much, Marina. As Marvina said, do go and look at our social media, follow us. We do have a few events coming up in the near future, so please be part of that. Next, we have Delia Mattis from London Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, everybody, and good evening, and thanks for being here at Women Will Not Be Silenced. I'm just here to talk about women, really, and how fabulous we are. And here is a prime example, People's Assembly, ran by a woman, you know? And if we look at the protest that we had on Sunday, the banner was being held largely by women. Black Lives Matter female activists leading the People's Assembly march through Manchester. Strong women in leadership positions. So, no, we won't be silenced. Why the hell should we be silenced? Because you know what? This movement is nothing without strong women leaders. And that's just a fact. And the fantastic thing is now we are creating spaces for ourselves. Now we are demanding that we are platformed in the right way. Now we're demanding that we have a seat at the table and our voices will be heard. We will not be silenced. It's fantastic. So we've been talking about Sarah Everard and that case. And of course, you know, I stand here as a woman and, you know, my heart goes out to the family. May she rest in peace. What happened to her was absolutely, it was just horrific. It was horrific. And it was done by a police officer, which is even more horrific. But I can't sit here and just talk about, you know, Sarah Everard. Look how many black women have died at the hands of the police. And we don't get the same notoriety. In fact, we barely get any. We barely get any. So I'm not going to sit here and just talk about Sarah Everard when our black sisters have died, you know, in numbers, murdered by the police. And in a feminist movement, and I'm very reluctant to use that word, and I'll be quite honest with you, I'm very reluctant to use that word because it seems very middle class and white to me. I don't think that I have a position in this feminist movement because they're all very well to do. Some of these women have done very, very well for themselves and they call themselves feminists. Well, black people aren't here to prop up a feminist movement that's led by white middle-class women. We need to be propped up because we've faced more hardship than they have in society. So I'm very reluctant to use that phrase, feminist. But in this feminist movement, you know, black women are left out. When we talk about, you know, sexual abuse and rape and sexual violence against women, black women suffer disproportionately from these issues, and you don't hear it. Now, one of the issues is, I know we have our inter-community issues, and we're entitled to our community and our culture because we've been through hundreds of years of struggle, and if the only thing we have left is our culture, then we have to hold on to it and be very proud of it. But in the same vein, we have an issue where we don't feel comfortable to come into spaces like this and talk to you. We don't feel comfortable because we don't feel that our voices have ever been heard. And that's the sad truth. Women, black women have suffered sexual violence in quiet for very many, many years. And we have to do something about making our spaces more comfortable for those people from black and brown communities to come into spaces like this. So when we say women will not be silenced, we mean women from all different communities and all different backgrounds. I love the fact that we've got this platform and this panel. I think we need to be taking this to the trade unions. I think we had a really good discussion yesterday about what we should do and what demands we should be making of our trade unions. And I think this platform is something absolutely that we need to be taking to the trade unions because trade unions are not reflective of society largely. I have to say, if you look at their power structures, they are all pale, stale, white men of a certain age. They're not reflective of the panel that you are seeing here today. If trade unions are going to keep up with what's happening in today's society, they need a revamp. They need a total overhaul and a revamp, and they need panels like this to address them and say what you're representing is not good enough. It no longer suits today's society. It's time for a change. So open to any questions, but I'm very happy to be here. But solidarity with all the people, black and brown women from communities who don't ordinarily get this space. Thank you.
Thanks, Delia. Looks like we need a road show, yeah? A trade union road show. Next up, we have Steph Pike, another founding member of Women Will Not Be Silenced. Over to you, Steph.
Thank you, Ramona, and it's great to be here today. I was actually really pleased last night to see Cressida Dick popping up on the television, and after 6 months of knowing that a serving police officer had murdered a woman, she'd made a brilliant plan, obviously on the back of a fag packet, which amounts to, we will address this issue by appointing a very important person. That is the response of the head of the Metropolitan Police to institutional misogyny and racism in her police force. It's not fucking good enough. And basically, the response of the police and the government have been insulting to women, to tell us to flag down a bus if we're not sure if someone's a genuine police officer or not. Well, we would do, but the Tories cut all the bus services, so we might be waiting quite a while for that. And we can't just be looking, it's not just about the police, as shocking as they are. We have to look at the criminal justice system as well, which has been letting down women for years and years and years. We're in a situation now where less than 2% of rapists are convicted by our criminal justice system, which is tantamount to decriminalising violence against women. And we just have to look at the comments of the judge in the Sarah Everard case. Sure, he sent Wayne Couzens down for life and he'll never be released from prison. But in doing so, he said Sarah Everard was the victim of a grotesque series of circumstances. No, she wasn't. She was the victim of a man who'd planned to abduct and murder a woman. She was the victim of male violence, and we have to call it out for what it is. He also said that she was the wholly blameless victim in this case. And we know from case after case after case that what these white privileged judges mean is that she was a white woman. And we have to ask ourselves, if Sarah Everard had been black, would Wayne Couzens have got the same sentence? If Sarah Everard had been a working class poor woman, would Wayne Couzens have got the same sentence? If Sarah Everard had been from the Traveller and Roma community, if she'd been drunk that night, if she'd taken drugs that night, would Wayne Couzens have got the same sentence? Because we know that not all women are as unequal as each other. As Delia said, black women are disproportionately affected, and we have to have a women's movement that is also an anti-racist movement. And I have to say, we are here as part of a festival of resistance against the Tories, and I have to say that the women's movement has to be centred in a liberation, politics of liberation and politics of socialism. Because like Delia and Chantal have said, Priti Patel is mentioning the word woman over and over again as though that fucking means anything in reality to women. Boris Johnson is like criticising the police, but they are not going to be part of the solution. They are part of the fucking problem. The Tories are perpetrators of violence against women. The violence of a £20 cut to universal credit that will disproportionately affect women and black women and women of colour. The violence of the racism that the Tory party pushes. We have to be clear, the Tories are not, I don't care how many bloody, this is what a feminist looks like t-shirts Theresa May wears, they are not friends of the women's movement. Because this is about systems of power. It is systems of power that oppress women in the same way that the systems of power oppress black people, oppress the traveller and Roma community, oppress the workers of this country. And it is only by uniting together and ripping down those systems of power that we will all be free. Solidarity. Oh, and I'm also a poet, so I'm going to finish off with a couple of poems. So we're in Manchester, the city of the suffragettes. And there's a park called Alexandra Park not far from the centre where at the start of last century when women were fighting for the vote, there was a glass cactus house until suffragettes put a bomb in it and blew it up. And we're also not far from the City Art Gallery where feminists went in and smashed up the pictures. So this is our city, Manchester, suffragette city. In Alexandra Park, young trees shivered with excitement. They wrote this in their rings, how their leaves dappled the dawn light, purple, green and white, to shield her coming and going. How the morning exploded in 1,000 diamante stars and cactus spines rained up to embroider freedom on a sullen Manchester sky. How freedom made bold the hearts of 3 women climbing gallery steps, skirts crackling with revolution, pockets deep with rage and rocks. How their missiles ricocheted round walls daubed with men's smug self-congratulation to change the course of his story, to crack the future open for us all. A century and a continent away, you, female trinity, pussy riot, rip stagnant cathedral air with punk raw songs of rebellion and defiance, until you're dragged to prison camps. And in your cells, through brutal frozen nights, know this, you are not alone. You will never be forgotten. Because whenever and wherever they try to take a sister down, 1 million women rise. Thank you. Okay, and I'll finish with this one. And this poem's called We Will Not Be Deodorized. Take your shackles, your chains, your violence, your rape. We will not be bound by your laws, your lies, your prejudice, your expectations, your science, your biology, your definitions of who we should be. We create our own worlds, our own lives. We make solid our own outlandish dreams. We are free. Take your fashion, your body fascism, your plucking and shaving, your surgery, your plastification. Take your perfume pants, your intimate wipes, your scented sanitary wear. We rejoice in fat and muscle and hair. We stink of blood and sweat and skin. We will not be deodorized. We reek of the ocean, deep hot hunger of our lovers' cunts. We will not smell of the sterile chemistry of your misogyny. You abduct us murder us, imprison us, terrorize us, refuse to educate us, but still we speak out. Still we sing out. Still we shout out. We will not be silenced. We are unquiet. Across centuries, across borders, we rise up. We fight back. We are dirty. We are brave. We are dangerous. We are pussies. And we riot. Thank you. Solidarity.
Wow, amazing, Steph Pike. Steph actually has a poetry book if anybody's interested to see her afterwards. So we've got maybe about 20 minutes left, so I thought if you're up for it, we would really like to welcome any contributions or questions that you might have for the panel. And once we've done that, we'll just go back to everybody just for maybe a couple of sentences to round up. So does anybody have a question or a contribution? So we'll take maybe 3 or 4, and then we'll come back.
Thank you. Hello, hello, ladies. Hello, everyone. My name is Elda. Just to see that wonderful, beautiful panel, it makes my heart, jump. Because few years ago, we'll not be able to see all that diversity sitting down here. And I'm talking about as a Brazilian black woman, and it's the same back there as well. Things are changing, slowly, very slowly, but they are changing. So for me, it's wonderful to see that shame, that place is not packed of people to hear what this woman said today. Shame. And shame on our brothers as well. Because every single one of you should bring 1 or 2 more to make this place full. So the world will be a better place, the world will change, and things will be better. But look that. When we say women's are going to speak, what happened? The men's run away. I don't understand why they run away. But yet, we are the ones to rule the world. Even not. We are not in the positions where we should be. But we are the one making the world keep going. You guys may not see or realize, but if you guys are here today, I will tell you why. Half of the population in the world is woman, and the other half is the mothers of the other half. Thank you very much.
Hi comrades, I thought that was really good. Obviously, as a young female activist, it's always an inspiration to see other women activists like fuck shit up. This is a conversation I had with Steph recently, but something that is a genuine problem for women in Manchester right now is spiking. There's a Facebook group called Manchester Student Group, which is a Facebook group for every student in Manchester to join. And every single day, literally every day, there is a new story of a woman putting on Facebook, last night I was at this club and I was spiked. Last night I was at this club and my friend was spiked. One of my close friends had a house party where she knew every single person present and she was spiked there. So it's not this myth that it's one strange man, it is all men because we don't know which men it is. And when it's our friends who we've trusted to come into our house and it's still an issue, you just sort of feel a little bit hopeless. And when the government is peddling the exact same sort of sexist rhetoric that is ending up with our women, our sisters and our friends getting spiked, not only is it just, deeply insulting, but it makes you feel deeply alone and angry. And when the police, who, are supposed to serve and protect, I don't think anyone believes that's what they do, but when the police continue to lie and say, yeah, we're on your side, that's even more insulting because it's the police that are the problem. It's the police that do absolutely shit all when you get spiked. It's the police. But I was assaulted in a park last year, and I reported it to the police, and I was sort of umming and ahhing over whether I should do it because I hate the police, to be honest. But I decided I had to report it because I didn't want it to happen to someone else. And when I reported it to the police, they were racist about the person who did it to me because he was black. And then they asked me what I was wearing, and I said I was wearing a West Ham shirt and leggings. But even if I was wearing fuck all, does it really matter? So these are the issues that we're up against. And we're going to hopefully get something going in Manchester to stop the spikings. But thank you for what you do. And, well, hopefully one day we'll all be liberated and we'll be laughing about today and how horrible it used to be for women and girls, especially black women and girls. So thank you.
Thank you, that was amazing. I was feeling really numb, and being in a real space was really spine tingling. I just wanted to point out the barriers that disabled people and women face. So if I was a disabled person in inaccessible housing, I'd have had to make my way here using inaccessible transport. I might have struggled to get into this space. I'd have definitely struggled to get on the platform and have a seat around the table. If I was deaf, I might not be able to lip read. We don't have the resources to always make our information accessible, sign language interpretation. So I just think this is so much untapped potential and resource of disabled people, people with health conditions. We need to listen to what their requirements are. We need to ask each other and make this part of a normal, everyday conversation that we should all expect, because there was suffragettes in wheelchairs making the best of what they had, and hats off to them. So I just think we need to not infantilize disabled women. There's a lot of fetishization of disabled women, and there's just not the representation there across the board. So I think we just always need to think, what can we do when we're doing a hashtag? Put a capital letter at the beginning of each word so screen readers can understand it. Seek out the disabled people's organisations that are led by and for disabled people, especially the very few that exist that are by and for disabled women. And let's think about, if you had an assistance dog, could we offer support with that? You know, let's just keep bearing this in mind all the time. And I think that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Hi there. Two things. Firstly, I'm a bus driver. It's not my job, right? It really isn't my job. I have stopped a bus to pick up a woman with a knife wound who was running away from somebody. I don't know who she was running away from. I've done that. Of course we will do. We will get you home safely if we can. But it's not my job. It's not my job to police the police, right? It's not the job of my colleagues to police the police. They are supposed to come to our assistance when we need them, not the other way round. Secondly, I'm a trade union rep, and I would really like to know what we can do to make things more equal in the trade union movement, because you're absolutely right, it isn't. Thankfully, my union has now got a female general secretary. But it's been a long time coming. And as you said, you look around the top table of most trade unions, and for the large part, they are stale, male and pale. My own branch, exactly the same. We've got elections coming up. I'm trying to get people. I'm trying to get women. I'm trying to get people of colour to come and stand for one of the reps' roles, and they don't want to do it. They don't want to stick their head above the parapet. They've already had enough of being shot down, of being silenced, and they don't want to put themselves in the firing line. And I want to know what more we can do. And it's not for me to tell these people what to do. It's for me to ask, what can we do to make things more equal? And finally, thank you. I didn't know about the hashtag thing. I'll remember that. Thank you.
Can I just wanted to say something. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't know if anyone seen the news this morning. Dan Walker interviewed Boris Johnson, and he just put simply to him, will you make misogyny a hate crime? And Boris Johnson swerved the fuck out of the question. He actively said he would not make misogyny a hate crime because it would overwork the police. They can't handle the laws they've got now. How will they handle more? So I just want to say, I just want to say as a man, I support that act, and it should be brought into power. Misogyny should be a hate crime.
Yeah, I just want to bring up women's mental health. Mental health services for women are much more poorly underfunded than they are for men. And there is a serious need for women's mental health to be addressed in quite a different way to men's. But I went to an event in Eastbourne run by a group of young women, and they'd done it at their school when actually their school had told them not to, but they'd refused to not do it, so the school had backed down. They were talking about harassment by men, boys even, and it was quite shocking. They were 15-year-olds, and they were talking about, comments about the size of the boobs and everything at age like 12, 13. And one of these young women is now, she's been through CAMS. She was declared cured. She's now needing CAMS services again. She's been on a minimum 18-month waiting list. It's now up to 2 years, and she's still waiting, and they won't even give her any indication about how soon it will be before she's actually seen. And from my own experiences in mental health, I really, truly believe there's got to be a focus on women's mental health, looking at it as a different in a different perspective to men's. It's not all the same. They need to be treated differently, and there needs to be some equality, and more needs to be talked about women's mental health, eating disorders, personality disorders, some of the conditions that affect women much more than men.
Thanks very much for those contributions. And I think just with bearing the comments and contributions in mind, I'm going to go around the panel again to get some final thoughts before we finish up. And just before we finish up, I'd like to say that after this, we'll be going to St. Peter's Square to join Stand Up to Racism, to take the knee. So hopefully you'll all come there with us to do that. But now in the meantime, I'll go back in the order that we started, and that was with Helen.
Thanks very much, Ramona. I just wanted to pick up the trade union point because it's important, because I'm a full-time official for the GMB trade union. And it's true, I think trade unions are reflective of the misogyny that's deeply ingrained in wider society. So we do have a problem here. And I think what men can do is men can obviously support and encourage women and allow women to stand beside you. That's not happening at the moment. I had to kick the doors down, unfortunately. But it would be nice if the brothers could just allow us to be equals. And when a woman gets to the top of a trade union, it'd be nice if people would stop saying, oh, she slept her way to the top, because that does get said about successful women in the trade unions, unfortunately, even in 2021. So there's so much that can be done to support sisters in the unions. And I also wanted to make the point that misogyny, it's systemic. And in Ireland, where Ramona and I are from, women were horribly abused, particularly when they had babies outside of marriage. And I just wanted to say it's so important to speak up about the hatred of women, because it leads to fatalities. In Ireland, babies were taken away, babies died because of hatred of women. So it's a very, very serious situation. So I'll leave my comments there. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Chantal?
Mic check, yeah. Yeah, I just thought there was some amazing comments raised at the end, especially the one around mental health. I feel like during the pandemic, we should not overlook the fact that women bore the brunt of the pandemic. We went home, we were doing the housework, we also became blinking teachers, and we were also expected to manage our full-time roles. And yet afterwards, there's been no thought of how we all coped and how we all got through it. And the answer is we didn't cope. We were all going blinking mad, but no one was listening. And it was just like, get on with it, women. There was massive increases in referrals that went into social care. There was a 40% increase in children going into the care service, and that is no accident. That is because there was a unrealistic amount of pressure placed on women to continue to perform throughout the pandemic, and that needs to be addressed. Women's mental health needs to be spoken about, because you're damn sure if a woman turns up in front of a judge and was arrested for something, she would be spoken about via the mad, bad or sad framework, and you are penalised for having mental health in court throughout the NHS and throughout care services. So we really do need to be addressing women's mental health. I love the point raised about intersectionality by Delia. I think that's super important. And as much as I love the suffragettes, we have to be honest, the suffragettes won the vote for white middle-class women first. Black women didn't come until a few years later. So we do need to be intersectional throughout our approaches. Especially when we think about our trans siblings and including them, because some of the worst violence that trans women face is trans black women, and it's through the roof at the moment. In relation to the role of men, I have kind of an issue with this whole, stop a bus driver, find a man, especially when we talk about the club conversation. We're always assuming that men are going to come in and save us. It's Black History Month, and I'll give you a quick bit of black history. Has anyone here heard of the Dahomey Warriors? Okay, they were an all-female army that guarded modern-day Benin, pre-slavery times, before Benin was colonised. And they were some of the fiercest women you will ever meet. The French could not beat them in hand-to-hand combat. They had to come in with guns. They had to send the cavalry in to beat these women. And they held off colonialism in France for about 5 years after everywhere else was colonised. Do you know the Dira Milaje in Black Panther, the all-women army in Black Panther? They are based off the Dahomey Warriors. They are based off these real-life sisters. So this concept that we constantly have to have men flying in to save us is deeply flawed. And I believe if nightclubs, if the police force, if all these spaces which are highly male and toxic had more women in, we wouldn't have these issues, because you're damn sure if you had a female member of door staff watching out for our sisters, we wouldn't have as many spikings. So I do have an issue with this whole, male bus drivers going to save us. We need to look to men. We need to look to women. And the issue is that we haven't got enough women, take you back to the trade union point, in positions of power, inform and change. And as has been raised before, this isn't a man-hating speech, but there should be more men in here. And there's so many times when I have a conversation with men and go, we talk about feminism, and they go, oh, that's a woman's issue. And I'm like, well, we didn't create misogyny. This is your issue, fellas, so you need to be sitting at the table. So yeah, I'll leave you there. I love the points from the audience, and you guys have been amazing too. Thank you kindly.
Chantal, be honest to you, I think for women, we've been saving ourselves longer than we can even imagine. And we need to kind of encourage that voice, as you said. We've asked men for years to be our allies. We've asked, we've begged, we've screamed, we've shouted. Let's try the alternative. Men should be here. What elders said, men should be here. This place should be packed. It's not even an if or buts. You asked about how best. I was laughing when you said, as a bus driver, it's not my job. Yeah, it's not. The fact that someone thought it was okay to actually give that as a solution when it came to my safety, my daughter's safety, it's a piss take. We know as black women, we can't even run from the police. They said we should run. As a black woman, we were reading that statement, and in my head, I'm thinking, they're trying to kill us now. They're trying to create one rule for one and run. I was thinking, imagine Sarah was called Essie. No, let's imagine it was Bibi or Nicole or Sabina. Now, let's imagine that was my child. You think anyone seeing my daughter run away from a single police officer, I bet some next feminist white woman will probably tackle my daughter down and give her to the police. That's the reality of what we see from that. The mental trauma, now going back to your mental trauma. Being a black woman, the mental trauma of seeing the system and knowing that we don't even have the hammer to break the windows. That's how bad feminism has taken it away from us. We've been written out of history just normally. You were talking about Masha, you're talking about the stone wall. They created a white character to depict a black trans woman. That's the reality. We've been part of everything you know that is British. You did not get anything without black women actually paving the way, but they write us off. 2021, they still write us off. We talk about the intersectionality, about disability, and looking at accessibility. Disabled, let's say autistic on the spectrum. Let's talk about dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. Let's talk about the fact that we are highly functioning depressive people while we do this as activists. Because no one talks about activist mental health, you know. Who heals the healers? Who heals those who are going to the front line, constantly fighting? Who asks us after COVID and us marching every weekend for Black Lives Matter? Who has checked in on us? No one. Who fights for our own equality? No one. But guess what? The intersectionality of the story is that as a black woman who is disabled, who is high functioning depressive, who has all these different things, who also has health conditions, no one freaking cares. That's the fact. So while I fight for everybody else, let me tell you, no one is fighting for Chantel or Delia. No one is fighting for whether we will be replaced than instead of being supported sometimes. And this is why women won't be silent is so vital. Because we need to start fighting for something that is intersectional. We need to be able to listen to your recommendation and say, next time, how do we get a BSL interpreter? And this is where donation comes. I don't need you to just support now. Put your money where your mouth is. Don't ask women to come to your panel if you don't think about their childcare or their transportation or their safety. Don't start asking us to do things because it's free. Mostly if it's a black woman. Because I'm telling you, the obstacles, if you are an ally, and if you say you are here to support women's accessibility, I'm asking, are you looking at the barrier to support all women? I'm going to read this at the end. I'm thinking about what are the barriers for all women to get access to something. Because what might allow you be here doesn't mean it's going to allow me, Elder, Adria, or Delia, or Chantel to be here. In fact, we are acknowledging our privilege as black women to be in your space today. As my sister that has been here every day throughout this whole event, I celebrate you. Because not enough women of color are in this space. And that's because accessibility is something sometimes we have. So please make sure you look at how you bring everything accessible to all women.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk about, because we've got to be realistic when we have these meetings. So when we talk about institutions like the police, and when we talk about police reforms, listen, we've been having reviews and reports way back from Macpherson. What has changed? In fact, it's got fucking worse. 750 police officers have been charged with sexual misconduct, and only 83 of them have been sacked. We can't look to Priti Patel or any of them, Cressida Dick, or any of them to solve our issues. Police reforms it's a fantasy, and it's never going to be happen. Listen, you're talking about an institution that was built on the premise of white supremacy. And I'd like anybody to tell me how a white supremacist organization could be reformed, because I don't think it's possible. So we can't look for police reforms. That's never going to happen, and it's by design, to try and save innocent and vulnerable women, because it's just not going to happen. You know, we are the ones, we have to save ourselves. When it comes to promoting our cause within trade unions, brother, we need you. We need you to go in there, and it can't just be us, you know, speaking about women's rights. We need you to speak about women's rights. And we also need you to invite women to come to your trade union branches and speak about the issues that we're facing in society. When you talk about the female trade unionists who are tired and they don't want to stand for these positions. I don't blame them, really. And I'm talking to you from an ex-branch secretary. I know how difficult it is, and it's even more difficult when you're a black woman because deliberately they try and silence your voice. You've got something powerful to say, but they don't want to hear it from you because you're a black woman. They don't want you to make too much noise. So this thing about feminism, I read this thing the other day on social media, and it said, black women have always been feminist leaders, but only a few years ago you were saying we had an attitude problem, and that's the kind of attitude that we get in some of these trade unions. So don't leave it just to us. Amplify our voices, of course, but men need to be in those spaces raising the issues that we're raising today. And we'll stand there right with you in solidarity. Thank you very much.
Hiya. Yeah, just to address the point about mental health and the cuts to services, I think... Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you, sister. Yeah. And then that's a problem, and this is what we need to do. It's not just about the police, it's not just about the criminal justice system, it's about the cuts to mental health services that disproportionately affect women. It's about cuts to the NHS in general that disproportionately affect women. It's about the Tories driving up poverty, which disproportionately affects women. It's the cuts the Tories have made to domestic violence services, to the services that women need to keep safe. We have to campaign across all these areas, and we have to unite with other campaigns in order to do that. But in uniting with other campaigns, it's important that we're here as a women's organisation to make sure our voices are heard within those campaigns, to make sure that the issues specific to women are at the forefront of those campaigns as well. So, you know, we pledge to carry on fighting and working together until we have liberation for everyone, however long that takes. Solidarity.
Okay. We are here to say thank you so much for coming this afternoon. And we will be heading to St. Peter's Square right now if you want to join us. Thank you very much.